Hello, my name is Roman Dindihashvili, and this is the lecture number 3 on the greatest chess players ever lived that I met with and I encountered with. And the topic of the lecture today, Bobby Fischer, again. In 1956 and 57, I was then 12, 13 years old, a very young and promising chess player, and my parents were very supportive of me playing and pursuing chess professionally. And obviously, my idol, just like everybody else's almost, was Bobby Fischer. And I lived in Soviet Georgia, and I found out that Fischer, some very young, at that time, Fischer was not Bobby Fischer that conquered the world. It was just a little boy, 12 years old boy, actually 13 years old because he was just a year older than me. He was visiting Moscow to play against some top Russian grandmasters blitz. I found out this a couple of days earlier, and obviously I wasn't any decision maker in my own career, and my father decided to take me to Moscow. It's a long journey, and I went to Moscow to witness Bobby Fischer playing some top Russian grandmasters. I believe it was 56. I remember it very well, but I don't remember exactly. It was 56, might have been 57. So depending on that, Fischer was 13 or 12 or 13 years old. Okay, 55 or 56 more like. So, and I saw Fischer playing some top grandmasters such as Vasyukov, Antoshin, and even Petrosyan. He played all of them. He played many games. He played for several hours. The games were played in best known chess club in the world. It's a Central Chess Club of Moscow, which was on Gogolev Boulevard, and it's a huge building and entirely dedicated to chess. It's changed nowadays. The big part of this building dedicated to business, but at that time it was entirely chess and was supported by Soviet government. I saw Bobby playing, and it was most fascinating spectacle. So he was playing, this boy, he was from time to time biting his nails, very impulsive, and the only problem I have seen him having with these Russian grandmasters, most of them being grandmasters and some of them masters, 12-year boy, the only problem he had constantly is to reach the pieces, because he was a little boy. He reached the pieces. He had no problem destroying these players in the blitz games, and he beat them like with incredible, as I could recall, maybe 90% of the games he won against top players. The only player he had reasonable problems was Tigran Petrosyan, which was absolutely, at that time, he was on the peak of his career and was absolutely remarkable blitz player. This has kind of stick in my memory, this event, and I was fascinated, and I dreamed also to be on that level sometimes. It never happened, of course, but I was absolutely fascinated with this event. And that's why in 1980 I was so thrilled to finally meet him, in person, and had to have a chance to discuss with him certain chess positions, chess events, and theoretical novelties. This was one of the most memorable events in my life. So now, what do I think Bobby's strength is? In my opinion, Bobby's strength, not in my opinion, I'm quite sure what I'm saying now, he was not wild imagination like some of the other GMs had, not some original ideas, not wild style, sacrificing like Tal. No. Fischer had phenomenal, uncanny memory and absolutely phenomenal ability of calculating variations. He knew everything in modern chess theory, including openings that he never played, and he could remember the pages of the book, word by word, letter by letter. So this is unhuman memory he had, and his calculating ability made him absolutely one of a kind. So Fischer I would compare his style to Ripka, to some of the biggest chess engines of our times. That's why his ability of scoring some remarkable number of points, something like 12 out of 12 or 13 and a half out of 14. He had a lot of tournaments with this kind of results. And calculation was absolutely out of the world. Nobody could out-calculate him, and he had great sense, great intuition. So this is more than enough to make you by far the number one chess player, not at that time, but maybe of all times. Well, I've been asked many times question, who do I think was better, Fischer and Kasparov? You cannot compare them. You cannot compare them because Fischer lived in an era with no computers. Kasparov's, most of the strength was with computers, and Kasparov was a very imaginative player and very strong in certain type of position. By talent, I don't think anyone can come close with Bobby Fischer. When talking about Bobby Fischer and talking about the best games he played, I don't pick the games that are very well known. I already showed in my previous lecture a couple of games that are not that well known, were not included in best Fischer's 60 memorable games. And so is going to be the next game we're going to look. Next game also. Fischer played with white against famous Hungarian grandmaster then, István Bilek, and it was played in Capablanca Memorial in Havana, although I think that was the year where Fischer couldn't travel to Havana, and he played out of United States by radio, and the organizers were so thrilled that Fischer would play that they allowed unprecedented event, somebody playing from different country. Due to U.S.-Cuban relationship, so Fischer couldn't travel to Cuba. So the game is French defense, was played e4, e6, Fischer is white, d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, d takes e, knight takes e4, knight d7. This is one of the very well-known varieties of French defense. Bishop e7, knight takes f6, that was old theory. Bishop takes f6, and h4, supporting the bishop. I don't want to attract your attention to the opening part of it, because that's not our goal. So we want to show you the simplicity, preciseness, and incredible execution. So there was no something out of ordinary, ingenious idea, no. But this game, I remembered when it was, when I saw this game, I was extremely impressed. And this is one of the few games of Fischer that I was admiring him for. So after h4, h6 was played. Bishop takes, queen takes. The idea of taking with the queen and not with the knight, because if black takes with the knight, obviously white is going to go bishop d3, and white has good control on centralized squares. Queen takes f6 has maybe potential idea of e5, and as far as knight standing on d7, knight controls e5, c5 square, and black intends to develop light square bishop to b7. So that's why queen took, queen d2. Obviously, white has to castle queen side, both sides castled, and b6. From now, you will see something incredible. I don't think humans, most of the humans, would make the move Fischer made. But based on calculations and based on the way game went, it was nothing brilliant, but preciseness of execution was on the highest level I have ever seen. And bishop b5 was played. Now, if black goes a6, obviously bishop c6 will delay their development for a while. So black has to play bishop b7, but they cannot do it now because knight on d7 is hanging. So queen e7. But queen e7, you see how it was incredible calculation. Queen e7 deflects the queen from the king side. And now after rook h3, bishop b7, finally Black wants to go a6 and kick the bishop out of b5. And now rook g3. Still no time for a6 because threatening queen takes h6, ending the game. So king h8 has to be played. And now every move is forced. Bishop takes d7. And here, after quite a bit of thinking, black played bishop takes f3. Now, what would happen after queen takes d7? If queen takes d7, knight e5, queen has to go to e8. Because after queen e7, black will never be able to play f6 because of knight g6 check. Suppose queen e8, queen f4. Again, f6 cannot be played because of knight g6. And now if king h, then h5, and knight is absolutely safe on e5. f6 move loses immediately. White has quick win in a couple of moves. Queen g6, queen g4, attacking g7 pawn, and queen e7 is the only move, and then knight g6 simply forks and wins immediately. Now, why queen e7 is the only move? Because a move like rook g8 leads to a forced mate. Queen g6, now on king h8, knight f7 wins the queen. And if queen takes, pawn takes, this is a checkmate. So I, knowing and studying Fischer, I can tell you, I almost can vouch for it, but when he played bishop takes d7, he calculated it all. He calculates. The incredible ability of calculation is very well known of his. Well, there is another American grandmaster whom I played with, maybe 24 times, Walter Brown. Walter Brown, I should tell you, the amount of calculation that he puts in the game may be as high as Fischer's. The only difference is 80% of Walter Brown's calculations was unnecessary. That's something that your opponent would never do on high level. And he had problems selecting what he should calculate, what he shouldn't. And computers don't have this problem. They calculate everything, and this way there is nothing goes by them. But Fischer would calculate only what he needed to calculate. He calculated queen takes d7 precisely, and well, I just showed you what variation. Knight e5, queen e8, queen f4, and after king h7, h5, that stops f6 forever, because I just showed you this. And there is no other way after h5. Black can untie themselves. Rook cannot move because of f7, pawn is hanging. And what white can do next, they can go rook g4. For example, if black just makes some random move, rook g4, followed by rook d3 and rook g3, doubling or something like that, and doubling rooks, and eventually, just finishing the game. Well, this is why Fischer's opponent, Bilek, he didn't take on d7 because he, in general, he didn't like white's knights present on e5, so he decided to take on f3. And that's another thing that obviously Fischer calculated, why he went for general exchanges. He takes back with the bishop, with, the bishop with the pawn, and after queen takes d7, rook d to g1, attacking g7 pawn and forcing to make only move f6, since rook g8 fails to rook takes g7, and there is a forced mate. So f6 was played, and now rook takes g7, queen takes g7, rook takes g7, and king takes g7. I'm going to tell you something about this position. This is absolutely, you have to have greatest experience with the queen against two rooks. I remember when I was in my 20s, there was a proposition when people would say, some strong players would bet some other strong player, that if he plays start position with all pieces off, all pieces, only 8 pawns, and the queen for one side, and 8 pawns and 2 rooks for the other side, who would win? Well, the correct estimate is white would win 7 to 8 games out of 10. Well, I mean, the queen would win 7 or 8 games out of 10 without losing any. So at best, two rooks may draw. This is exact same principle here. There are too many, not 8, but too many pawns on the board, and white has an extra pawn. Rooks have no open file, and rooks are extremely passive. Rooks are extremely passive, and queen is by far better than 2 rooks. And Bobby is proving just that. Queen f4, rooks are very clumsy, attacking on c7, rook a c8, and very strong move h5, preparing the penetration to g6. After h5, c5, black is desperately trying to get their rooks in play. Queen g4 check, king f7, queen g6 check, king e7, d takes c, rook takes c5, queen takes h6, rook g5, and b3. Now white has 2 pass pawns, 2 extra pawns. Rook on f8 is very passive. Black has absolutely no counterplay, and white slowly brings it home. So what happened after white played b3, as I already mentioned, there is absolutely no counterplay. e5, king b2, rook f7, a4, king e6. Well, perhaps the best defense would have been rook f8, but after king e6, queen comes out by queen h8. Well, queen would have came out anyway, because even if rook f8 is played, queen h7 check, and at the right time, queen can swing to d3. It's just a matter of time. So what happened here is king e6, queen h8, rook e7, h6, king f7, queen h7 check. This is already kind of is not as interesting part of the game because it's too easy to win. Queen d3. Now white queen penetrates on the other side of the board, and with support of h pawn, the game is practically over. King f7, h7. The execution is extremely precise. Rook h5. I have to point that king g7 is not an option because of h8 check, and queen d8 wins the rook. So that's why rook h5 is forced, but now queen d5 check. Of course, when h7, Bobby played h7, he has seen the key move here. And on rook e6, absolutely murdering move, f4. Pawn is pinned, black cannot take, and threatening f5. So black has to play f5, and now simply f takes e, rook takes h7, queen d7, rook e7, queen takes f5, king e8, and e6. Here, black simply resigned, which they could have done several moves earlier. Even f4 here is an easy win. Everything wins. Just 3 pawns and 2 connected pass pawns. Very simple game. There are no ingenious, spectacular moves, but fascinating preciseness, accuracy, and absolutely impeccable execution. That's one of the best indication of Bobby Fischer's strength. So I hope you enjoy the story about Fischer and the game we just analyzed, and I hope you learned something from that. And thank you very, very much.